Hello everyone and welcome to this video going through the November 21 paper for paper 2 or component 2 of EDUCAS English Language. This is the Tim Peake or Flying Machines paper. Okay, so this is a 2-hour paper, but paper 1's only 1 hour 45. That's because you have 2 writing tasks at the end of this paper, which are 30 minutes each. The reading section is an hour though, just like on paper 1. Okay, as before, you're going to ignore that instruction about 10 minutes reading at the start because you want to get straight onto the questions. And there are more questions this time, but the number of marks changes. So there are 6 questions rather than 5, but they are broken down more into sections. Okay. The best way to think of this paper is it has 3 parts to it, even though there are actually 6 questions. The first 2 questions here, they are on the modern text because you always get 2 texts to read on paper 2. So they're on the modern one. It's about Tim Peake being an astronaut. Question 3 and 4 always requires you to go to the old-fashioned text. All right, that's always on the back, not in the separate resource sheet. Okay, and those will always be on the old-fashioned text. And question 5 and 6 always requires you to look at both texts together. So the best way to split it up is that these first 2 questions take 20 minutes, the second 2 questions take 20 minutes, and the third 2 questions take 20 minutes. 20, 20, 20 gives you your 60 minutes of time on the reading section before you start doing the writing. Okay, so we're going to go through what is involved in this paper with a few sample answers, just like I've done on other videos, to show you what to do. If we bring in the extract here, you can't see it all, but I will scroll through. Obviously, you will have a copy in front of you as well. What we need to decide is what to focus on with these initial 1-mark questions. Now, with these 1-mark questions, you can sometimes get away with 1 or 2 word answers. Okay, you do not need to use full sentences. You do not have to put "we learn" like we do on paper 1. You can, if the answer is 12, just put 12. However, if it's a distance or a time or something like that, for example, if it's 12 kilometers and you only put 12, you won't get the answer. You have to put 12 km. Okay, or if it's like liters or something like that, 5 liters, you can't just put 5, you have to put liters. A bit like what you do in maths, you have to say the units. Okay, so first one, 11 here, or question 1 you can call it as well. Part A, what job did Tim Peake have to do on his spacewalk? Okay, so if I just itch that up there, I can make it a little bit clearer there. So we're going to go through, I'm going to look for any mention of Tim Peake, but we're also going to have to mention his job. Now, these 3 questions here, A, B, and C, are usually in chronological order in the text. So once you've found A, B, and C are going to be somewhere below it. Okay, so it says here, my first ever walk in space was the most vivid memory I have of my flight into space. Orbiting at over 17,000 miles an hour high above the planet Earth, it felt unreal to work in such perilous conditions. And you want to keep skimming through and find out what his job was. Okay, I'll give you a clue. It's in the first couple of paragraphs. Okay, pause the video if you need to, and if you've unpaused and you are ready, the first answer that you should have is that he had to, if I can just find it in here, he had to repair a solar panel. Okay, so it talks about the repair work here, and it also mentions the repair work there. Okay, you must be specific though. You can't just say repair a unit or repair work. You have to say he's going to repair the solar panel. All right. So just to show you as the sort of thing that would look like, we can put on here, part A, repair a solar, or faulty I should say, faulty solar panel. So you can see, using that has got me to write that. So literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words gets us an answer there. Okay, can you do part B and C as well, please, using the booklet that you should have with you, and then pause the video. Okay, if you've unpaused, your answers for that one are there. So that's the one I showed you there. The second one is that his spacesuit developed a fault because water had got inside. You can put either, you don't have to put both. And the person who sent the message is Sir Paul McCartney. Okay, so let's put that over there. If you got those ones, you've got 3 out of 3 so far. Well done. And then we go on to question 2. So remember, this is the same text. All right, it tells us there, these are from Ask an Astronaut. So you always, question 1 and 2 are always in that modern text. All right, so second question, and this is a common evidence question, like what you've done on paper 1. How does Tim Peake try to make his account of the spacewalk vivid and interesting for his readers? So you want to circle the keywords in that question there. So you should be circling vivid and interesting. So basically, we're looking for positive things. The spacewalk, when he's outside the space station, floating in space, how is that vivid and interesting? Well, you can think before you even read it that, you know, the sort of things that he's going to see and experience whilst he's there is going to make it really vivid and interesting. That kind of like, you know, experience that hardly anyone on the planet will ever get to do. Okay, so we're looking for anything that sounds really special, really vivid, so really clear, really descriptive, really positive. All right, so let's just drag that out there for the moment, just so I can see a little bit more of this text. And as before, like on paper 1, you may mention the odd little bit of language, but only if you're getting 7+ on your comment and evidences. So if you're not, there's no point. Try and concentrate on finding those 7 things. Now, I'm just going to zoom out slightly here. You want to make sure that you spread your answers from throughout the text, because on this question, unlike on paper 1, where you're given a certain number of lines, you know, like lines 15 to 30 or whatever it is, in question 2 and here on paper 2, you're always dealing with the full text. So there is quite a bit to read. You've got this bit here, and then you've got the second page here. So, you've got this bit here, and then I think that one's copied and pasted over my Tim Peake bit. Yeah, I need to itch that bit up a little bit. So that bit's part of the Tim Peake one. I'll scroll down to that in a minute. Okay, in fact, if I just copy and paste the second text, then I'll put it in the right place. There we go. Okay, so we need to make sure that we spread it from throughout. So we're going to need some comment and evidence from like the start. We're going to need some stuff from in the middle, down here, and we're going to need some stuff from near the end as well. Try not to fall into the trap of getting all your answers just from this bit here, because if you do, you're not going to hit many of the bullet points on the mark scheme. You're just going to hit the ones at the top, and you're going to end up repeating yourself. So try and make sure that you spread your answers from throughout. Okay, so let's zoom in ever so slightly, make that a little bit bigger. So we're looking for anything which sounds vivid and interesting. Let's do the first bit together. My first ever walk in space was the most vivid memory I ever had of my flight into space. Now, a lot of students go, oh, it's vivid memory. Well, you can't use that because that's in the question. You can't say vivid makes it vivid, so that's not going to count. Orbiting at over 17,000 miles an hour, high above planet Earth, it felt unreal to work in such perilous conditions. Okay, can you highlight the word or phrase in that sentence, please, that you think is going to be the answer to make it vivid and interesting? Okay, hopefully you've put about it being 17,000 miles an hour, because that is one of the things that makes it a perilous condition. Okay, so it's to do with speed. Next one. At any moment, I could have been hit by a hurtling micrometeorite, but it was worth the risk to witness the widescreen beauty of Earth, as few in history have done. Again, pause the video just for a second and figure out which phrase or phrases you want to do. Hint, there's a couple of possible answers that you could pick here. Okay, if you've unpaused, you can circle this bit here, the fact that they could be hit by a meteorite. Well, that's vivid, it's clear, it's dangerous, obviously, because that could hurt them. But also, the Earth has got a sense of widescreen beauty. And either one of those, or both of them preferably, would be really good answers. Okay, so second one is going to be using that common evidence structure as we've used before for EDUCAST English Language. And we're going to start with, firstly, so if you work along with me, we've got this idea of the speed. So firstly, Peake. And we don't want to say vivid and interesting because we're not here about to repeat the question. We're here to actually talk about the evidence. So 17,000 miles an hour. So we need to say something about speed, velocity, I suppose, if you want to be more technical, as he orbits around. Okay, so that's completely out of this world, literally, experience. So firstly, Peake describes the huge speed that the experience involved, comma, over 17,000 miles per hour. So here, just by using the word like speed or huge speed, I've got that sense of the comment in there. Okay, so there's your comment and there's your evidence. Now, that would get us 1 mark. Okay, so pause the video now, and now I'm trying to do the same thing for the next 2. The hurtling micrometeorite, so you want to either put it in your own words. If it's hurtling, think about what it's doing. Think about what damage or what issue a micrometeorite could cause if it strikes the the space station or the people who are doing the spacewalk, like Tim Peake, and then try and do the widescreen beauty. So you're going to use synonyms for what that looks like. If it's widescreen, if it's beauty, i.e. you can't use the word beautiful. So pause the video and do those two, please. Okay, if you've done that, here's the sort of thing that you could have put. So you could put next, they have to face the danger of objects or projectiles, you could call them, in space. Or they had to, actually, I should change the tense. Quote, hurtling micrometeorite. And then the next one, the widescreen beauty. So that's going to be about how wonderful it looked, how awe-inspiring, how, amazing, how, picturesque. You want to use something that's not the word beautiful. On the view he got, I just itched that up a little bit, actually. There we go. On the view he got, the spectacular, let's say, the spectacular view. He got looking down at Earth. Quote, or planet Earth, should have been a capital letter. Witness the widescreen beauty of Earth. Okay, so that one is our next bit there. I'm just going to do both of them at once, actually, for the color coding. So there we go. Danger of projectiles in space would be that comment. And then he focused on the spectacular view he got looking down at Earth. There's the comment there. Okay, so an examiner marking that would take their pen and they'd give you 1 for that, they'd give you 1 for that, and they'd give you 1 for that. So that scores 3 out of 10 so far. Okay, so like you've seen in previous videos, you now want to start yourself a timer. You would get 15 minutes on this. As I said, 20 minutes for the first 2 questions added together, 5 minutes at most for the first one, and then 15 minutes for this bigger 10 marker. But because I've done those 3 for you, you don't want to be spending 15 minutes because I've already done part of it for you. So I would say maybe like 11, 12 or so minutes. So start your timer now, pause the video, and then come back to me for the answers. Okay, so here are your answers for that one. You can see that there's kind of subcategories here under each of the headings. So the experience wasn't real, so you've got the speed, the change of day to night, the fact that it's a rare experience. Then you've got the dangers, the perils. So the micrometeorite I did as an example. There's extreme temperatures, and there's the potential of losing his grip and floating away into space. And obviously he would die if that happened. Then the experience is the widescreen beauty of Earth. So that's about the tone of wonder and awe. It's amazing, it's inspiring, it's spectacular, it's picturesque, whatever you want to use. He says it's like having a front row seat, so he compares it to watching something. He uses the idea of him marveling to show how fragile and beautiful Earth looked. He feels awe and reverence looking at the Earth, the vast blackness, so he feels very small in contrast to what's going on, and that's kind of the same thing that's happening here. He says he's a microscopic spectator and the universe feels so big. He calls it astonishing and humbling, so it's making him realise just how insignificant he is in comparison to the universe. He then writes about the importance of his job on the space station, and he gives examples. So his anxiety is replaced by determination. He has to fix the space station, which was also hinted at in question 1. He says the timing is critical because if he gets it wrong, then obviously it's dangerous. So that's a really important thing that he has to face. There's then the danger when his spacesuit develops a fault. So that's also like interesting. It's not interesting for him because it'd be very nerve-wracking, but it's a very important thing to mention. And then the task is declared a success because they do get the space station back to full power. And at the end, he says it makes him proud, and you can also say he achieved a personal dream. So that sense of accomplishment, that'd be a good one to do a feeling for there. Okay, so give yourself a score out of 10. And then we're going to go on to question 3. Now, question 3 will always require you, if you look at the top of the screen here, to switch on to the old text. So in this one, it says, to answer the following questions, you must read the article by Robert Wood on the opposite page. All right, so that means you need to go down to the other one that's there. And if I just scroll down and get myself a little bit more space, that'll help. So this is the Robert Wood text, which focus on a chap called Lilienthal. Okay, just making sure that that's all visible. Not quite. I need to, there we go, line that up a little better. Now, these ones here are done in the same way as question 1. So 3 marks, and you can get away with just a short number of words. I'm not going to explain how to do that one to you. Just stick a timer, maximum 5 minutes, pause it, and come back to me for the answers. Okay, if you've unpaused, your answers are there, because you shouldn't need my help for that one, really. They are quite simple, those ones. So part A, 8 years he'd been experimenting with machines. About 50 feet was how far he went in his flying machine, and after the flight he was quite breathless from excitement. That's the one that people sometimes miss. Okay, the first two are pretty easy to find. That one there is buried at the end of one of the paragraphs, I remember. Okay, so then let's go on to question 4. So that's the same text, and if I just inch that out of the way for a minute, we have the statement. So this question 4, is basically the same as question 5 on paper 1. You have a statement that you are expected to agree with. You're expected to find reasons to agree with it, just like in question 5 on paper 1. So the statement: Robert Wood admires Otto Lilienthal's skill in building and flying his flying machine. How far do you agree with this statement? So that's the key word there, admires. You'd want to circle that and focus on it. The fact that he's admiring it means you're looking for positive things. You're looking for praise. You're looking for compliments, okay? So you're looking for different reasons to compliment someone. You know, you can compliment someone's skills, their intelligence, the way that they're brave, or something like that. So we're looking for lots of different positive things. Okay, so if I just itch that up there, and then we can start looking through the text together. All right, so he talks at the start. Well, in fact, let's just go through the context at the top. Actually, you'll always get this here. It sort of gives you a little bit of context of what's going on. You can't use this in your answers. It's just to explain to you the time and the sort of like place that it was published in, etc. So you want to read it, but you can't use anything. And they'll always be before 1900. Otto Lilienthal was the first man in the world to build and make a successful flight in what he called his flying machine. He was also the first man to be photographed flying. In 1896, an American, Robert Wood, met Lilienthal and wrote an article about watching him fly. So basically, we're dealing with flying. So you can see why this has come on a paper with someone in the 21st century, Tim Peake, who's in space, because this is kind of like the version of space from 100 plus years ago. You know, we hadn't made it to the stars, but people were starting to try and fly and invent the first and early planes. Okay, so he says, the flying machine lay on the grass in the bright sunshine. Does that tell us anything about skill? No. Seeing its 24 square yards of snow-white cloth that made up the pair of enormous wings spread before me, I felt privileged, as if I witnessed the very start of the flying age. So perfectly had Lilienthal constructed the machine that it was impossible to find a single loose cord. Okay, so there's 2 positives so far. First of all, we've got this sense of privilege because he feels as though that he's watching someone special, and he says that Lilienthal's construction was perfect here. So as an engineer, as a designer of this thing, he says that he's done very, very well. Okay, so let's do those 2 as examples. If we go on to question 4, so I'm going to put that down here because I didn't do question 3 because you guys did it yourselves. So we're going to say, firstly, and we need to say I think, or I feel, or I agree, just like we do on paper 1 for some of the answers. So if you did 10, do it for 3 or 4, okay? So what is this sense of privilege, first of all? What does it mean to be privileged? It's to feel special. It's to feel as though you've got an experience which not everyone has, okay? So firstly, Wood feels, or I agree, I should say. Firstly, I agree, Wood admires him as he felt special at seeing such an important inventor and event. Quote, felt privileged. And I'm not going to put the rest of the quote in because I don't think you require that. I think that's enough to get the credit there. So that would be the judgment. And then he felt special at seeing such an important inventor and event. He realizes that it's a significant moment, okay? Now, try and do the second one yourself. So you can do it the I think or I feel I agree if you want to, but mainly focus on the comment evidence. So pause the video now and try that one for yourself. Okay, if you've done that, hopefully you put something like next, and you can put I think if you want to, but you don't have to. I'll put it for this one. So next, I think he praises his skill as an engineer, as he had perfectly constructed the machine. Now I know I've taken out perfect and had Lilienthal, but you're allowed to sort of paraphrase there to make it make sense. That is allowed. Okay, so if we put that in green there, he praises his skills, so that's a little judgment look. And then we're saying as an engineer. So we understand that constructing is to do with engineering. So that comment, although it's very, very brief, it does connect that to that. Okay, so an examiner would give you a tick there, and they'd give you a tick there as well. All right, so now you want to try and do the rest of them. There's about 12 or 13, I think, on the mark scheme for this one. It's not quite as many as some papers. However, track through and you should be able to find something in most of those paragraphs going down. And as I said before, try and make sure that you spread your answers from throughout the extract. Okay, so I'll pause the video now and then come back for the answers. Okay, so if you've done that, your answers are here. So the first two I modelled for you, so make sure you've got those ticked off. The second one, he calls him an engineer of great ability. He'd worked on flying machines for 8 years, so he's done it for a long time. That suggests dedication and, determination. Otto Lilienthal had to work hard to keep the machine level to begin the flight. It was a struggle to keep it, level physically this time. He was like an athlete, suggesting he was well prepared. You might use a synonym like trained, like it's the focus and the determination you might have. He knew exactly when to attempt to take off, so he understood it. He was like quite clever, quite sophisticated in his way he approached the task. He was able to expertly maneuver the flying machine, so that's the control he has over it. He landed perfectly, so he's clever, he's precise. He writes of the perfection of the design, so that idea of perfect and perfectly, although that's cropped up before, because it's in a different area of the text, it's further down, you're allowed to do that. He calls him fearless and brave, and he'd never witnessed anything so exciting. Now you'll notice that there's an absence of particular marks for your hows and whys for anyone trying to get those 8, 9s and 10s out of 10s. However, if you mention something appropriate, such as, like an athlete, comparing him to someone who's dedicated his life, to achieving a goal or something, that would get you your credit for that in that particular situation. Okay, so then we're going to go on to question 5. Now, question 5 is very different to anything you've seen before, unless you've already done one of these papers already. Now, let me just scroll that down. So it says here, to answer the following question, you must use both texts. So let's go back to the Tim Peake one that we had before. Question 5 and 6 both require you to use both texts, but they always have a different focus, and you cannot just do a general comparison of them. If you do, you'll get it wrong and you'll hardly get any answers right. You have to very carefully focus on the thing that it's asking you to. That's the most important skill in this question. Okay, so question 5 or 15, it says, using information from both texts, identify what Tim Peake and Otto Lilienthal wore for the spacewalk and the flight in the flying machine. I'm going to say that again, what they wore for the spacewalk. So what things are you looking for? You're looking for clothing, equipment, items, etc. Okay, so when you are reading through, that is all you are looking to find. All right, so if we look on the Tim Peake one, let's look towards the end of the second paragraph, because I know there's a couple of answers there. And we'll start with this bit here. Any nerves that I had before my spacewalk were dealt with by making sure that I was completely prepared for what I was about to do, and the moment I felt any anxiety disappear was when Len opened the hatch to space. Night was approaching, the sun was low on the horizon, and I remember pulling on my pressurized space gloves. Okay, what was the question? It's what did Tim Peake wear? What did he wear? Space gloves. Okay, now there are only 3 possible answers on the Tim Peake extract, and there's 2 possible answers on the other text, on the Lilienthal one. This one is a 4-mark question, so you're going to have to find 4 of the 5 possible answers to get the mark. There are not many to choose from. Okay, so you've got to be quite precise. In another paper where there might be more possible answers, I would very much encourage you to put 3 or 4 things for each text. Okay, in case you get 1 or 2 wrong, you're allowed to do that. Now, you don't have to do a lot of detail for this at all, okay? It's basically the same skill as what was going on in question 1 and question 3, except you just stick it in a full sentence, okay? You do not need a comment and evidence this time. So question 5, no comment or evidence needed. It's going to be much shorter. This is a 4-mark question. You should be taking 5 minutes at most, all right? Other things that you do have to do is you must refer to which text. You can't say the writer or the text because it's not clear which one you're coming from. And I would advise you to do 2 little mini paragraphs, 2 little separate sentences almost for each one, okay? So you're going to say Peake, because that's the quickest way of doing it, not writer or Tim Peake. The quickest way to just use his surname, okay? So Peake had to wear pressurized space gloves, comma, and then you could put another thing, or you could put also, or and, like that, and blank, like that. You do not need to do any kind of analysis there, okay? You can get full marks on that first one. You get 2 marks for the first text, literally about 30 words. Then what you do, start a new little line like that and just put, however, Lilienthal wore blank and blank. Now there's only 2 possible answers in this one, so I'm just going to put space for that there. However, in the real thing, you would try and put more, as I said. Okay, you do not need to do anything more than that. And if you do, you're wasting your time, and you need to get on to question 6 and the transactionals. It's really important for your timing. Okay, so if you want to pause the video now, as I said before, that one is going to get a mark. So I'll tick that off. But there's 3 more marks that we want you to get. If you do not get a mark for one of the text and you only get your marks for one of them, you're capped at 1 mark. Okay, you must get your answers. You can get a 2 and 2. You can get a 1 and a 3, you can get a 3 and a 1, but you can't get 3 and 0 or 0 and 3. You have to have a balance somewhat between the text. So pause the video now and have a go. Okay, there's your answers. So you can see pressurized space gloves, helmet, space helmets, and space suits. And Lilienthal had a thick flannel shirt to protect him from the cold, and baggy trousers with padded knees. Okay, tick for each of those, maximum of 4 marks. Okay, then we go on to question 6. All right, so if we just itch those out of the way for the moment. So it says here, both of these texts are about remarkable achievements in the history of flight. Okay, so that's not the focus. The focus comes in the bullet point here. You have to train yourself to look at the bullet point. Compare the difficulties and dangers faced by Tim Peake and Otto Lilienthal, and how the writers show these difficulties and dangers. Okay, so the how the writer is if they use, like, you know, a simile or a particularly powerful piece of language to emphasize the fear or something like that. But the main thing to do is to find the quotes, as always. Generally, you can get 6 or 7 out of 10 for this bullet point and 3 or 4 for this one. Okay, it's often been 6 and 4 split on the exam, but you can make sure that you can get a lot of the marks just by doing this bit. But if you don't recognize that it's difficulty and dangers and you just do a general comparison, you'll do really badly on this question. You have to read what it's asking you to do, okay? So unlike earlier on when we were looking for good things, we're now looking for bad things, okay? Now, this is not a comparison in the kind of traditional strict sense, okay? What I mean by that is you do not want to be going from one text to the other, and then back to the other, and then the other, and flipping and flopping between the two. What you want to do is do all of one text in one paragraph, then leave a line, however, and then do the other paragraph like that. That is the way to do it. You do not need to match them up, and if you do, it will waste your time, okay? I can't emphasize enough how you don't want to do that. So question 6, we're going to deal with the Tim Peake one first. So Peake, what kind of dangers did he face? And as I've said to you with question 5 on paper 1, on question 6 on paper 2, you can reuse stuff that's cropped up on a previous question. So what was mentioned earlier on in question 2 that he had to face, it was micrometeorites that I mentioned in one of the examples. So Peake had to face the projectiles, I think I called them before, you could say dangers, flying in space. Quote, hurtling micrometeorites. Spell it right. And that is enough to get you 1 mark. Okay? Sometimes you can even get away with just embedding the quote into a sentence. The comment might be optional. All right. Other things that we faced in that second question that you can be repeated are things like the low temperatures and maybe him facing like the danger of floating away if he didn't hang on. Also, he had to face the problem of, and I can't remember the exact quote it uses. Let's just dig it out. Where's the low temperatures? 200 degrees in Celsius to minus 200 degrees at night. It says just there. Okay, so that's the bit I'm going to use. I'm just going to put of cold or cold temperatures. And that's enough. So you can see here that I'm just categorizing the information, okay? And even if I just put that there and cold there, that is enough. So then I say next, and I want to do another one. So find yourself 5, 6 of these or so, and then what you do is you change paragraph, and then you say, however, Lilienthal had to face, and you want to do the exact same thing again, okay? So one of the first things that he had to face was about the cold as well. Now we don't have to compare them. We don't have to say, also he had to face cold similarly or anything like that. We just don't do it. We just put, also had to face the problem of cold weather. So he wore a padded, I think it's a padded shirt or a thick flannel shirt. I might have got the quote slightly wrong there. However, if you check back, you'll see which one I mean, but I can't fit it all on one screen, unfortunately. Okay. Now that is it in terms of the structure of the question. So clearly there's gaps in there that need to be filled in. But if for some strange reason that's all you wrote, then you would get 1 mark for that, you would get 1 mark for that, and 1 mark for that. So without doing anything else, that would be 3 out of 10. All right, so what your task is to do now is to extend this one and to find some more for each of them, okay? Maximum 15 minutes, but again, I've done some of the answers for you already, so I'll just take that score off, and then check back when you've unpaused and see the answers. Okay, so if you've unpaused, here are your answers there. So you can see it's done in 2 groups. These are the what's for Peak, the what's for Lilienthal. The how for Peak, the how's for Wood, describing Lilienthal. Okay, so Tim Peake, Hurtley micrometeorite, which I showed you, temperatures, losing your grip, night and day changing, spacesuits could go faulty, and the space station could get a fault. Lilienthal, he needed protection from the cold and padded shirt, the machine was hard to control, it went down too quickly, it could be caught by wind, and he flew very fast and high. How did he show it? Peake talked about the perilous conditions. Okay, if you picked out that word there, and the danger that was emphasized right from the beginning, you can show that. He uses comparison to compare the work in space with the work on Earth. He gives an example of the temperatures can specifically vary, and he uses critical to describe timing. In the Wood text, it described the tipping and rocking with every puff of air that's there. He writes about Lilienthal having to exert his entire strength, so there's that kind of emotive feel to that bit. He's anxious, so more emotions here, and then the machine swerved dangerously in the air. Okay, so give yourself a score out of 10 for that. And then when you've done that, you've done your reading section, and that should have taken you an hour. So if I just move those out of the way, you would then be on to the writing section, okay? So as you've been shown in school, 30 minutes on each of these. You're trying to do 1.5 sides to 2 sides for each one, 300 to 400 words for most students. So if you aim for 2 pages, if you get close to that, so long as your writing isn't enormous, it'll be fine. Big things to bear in mind, lively article has got to sound fun. That doesn't mean slang, it means excitable, it means keen, it means enthusiastic, it means semi-conversational, but not slang. A little bit like the way that a TV presenter speaks when they're introducing an entertainment program. Lively and catchy, but not full of slang. So things I can't live without, okay? Top tip, don't write about your phone. Everybody in the country wrote about the phone and the examiners get sick of reading about it. Think of something else that's really important to you that makes life worth living, that you get up for every day. Number 2, you've asked me to give a talk to your class about how people in their everyday lives can help protect the environment and save the planet. Write what you would say in your talk. The most important thing here is you acknowledge it's a talk. Say things like, as I see the people in front of me, or looking out at you all now, I can see that everyone wants to help the environment. Have that kind of, again, semi-informal way of speaking, give them lots of examples and sound passionate, okay? You wouldn't be giving that talk unless you were sounding passionate, okay? So 30 minutes on each, check your spag at the end, same as paper 1, capital letters and full stops are the most important thing. If you don't have that, it will drop your mark really, really strongly, okay? So I can't emphasize how much you must do for those, all right? And then if you take those in, someone in school will have a look for you and you'll be able to get a mark for this overall paper, all right? So I hope that was useful to you to go through paper 2 and check out the other videos for some more EDUCAS exam paper walkthroughs.